Before we start this video is for educational purpose only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. Good day, we are Group 3 and these are the Group 3 members. Engine Cadet Donmar PATLINGRAO, Engine Cadet MARVIN MARFA, Engine Cadet CIDRIC REPOLLO, Engine Cadet John KENRICK JACALAN TIMOTEO, Engine Cadet IVERSON DEMETERIO IHALAD, Engine Cadet PAWNCESS D PADAYOGDOG, and yours truly, Engine Cadet Windel Canonigo. Top objectives: identify the factors leading to global food security and examine the state of the Philippines in terms of food security during the pandemic. Second, what are the 5 components of food security? Third, what are the threats to global security? And lastly, fourth, is food security possible? Global food supply is not even in some places produce more food than others. Physical factors such as climate, soil, and granite, and human factors such as technology have historically controlled the quantity and type of food produced in any location. Today, there are many other factors that explain why some countries produce more food than others. Number 1. Climate. Global warming is increasing temperature by around 0.2 Celsius every 10 years. Rainfall is increasing in some places but decreasing in others. Higher temperatures and unreliable rainfall make farming difficult, especially for those farming marginal lands who already struggle to survive. Number 4. Technology. Improvements in technology have increased the amount of food available. Technology can overcome temperature, water, and nutrient deficiencies in form of greenhouses, irrigation, and fertilizers. This can incur an economic or environmental cost. ACEs import food across all globe all year round. Number 4. Loss of farmland. The growth of biofuel market is taking up valuable farmland, which is then not used for food. Pests and diseases. Pesticides have increased crop yields. Farmers and ACs can afford pesticides, where most farmers in low-income developing countries or LIDC cannot afford them. Next is water stress. Vegetation system provides water for countries with unreliable or low rainfall. Irrigation can double crop yields, but it is expensive to put these systems in place. Water can be taken either from underground aquifers or directly from rivers. Both have environmental consequences. Conflict. War forces farmers to flee their land or to fight in conflict. Food can be used as weapon, with enemies cutting off food supplies in order to gain ground. Crops can also be destroyed during fighting. Food shortage have caused riots and conflicts. The South Sudan region has faced conflict for years, with 4 million people facing food insecurity. Next is poverty. Poverty: when people have less money, they cannot afford to buy, and they become unable to work. Families in developing countries spend much more of their income in food. Some 62.1% of Filipino households experience moderate to severe food insecurity in 2020 amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, according to the Rapid Nutrition Assessment Survey conducted by the Food and Nutrition Research Institution. However, on July 27, 2020, Agriculture Secretary William Dar said that despite the COVID-19 pandemic and the imposed community quarantine since mid-March, the Philippines continues to be food secure with sufficient supply of basic commodities. We are confident that based on mid-July estimates, our food supply situation and the outlook of comfortable despite the constricted movement in the early weeks of the community quarantine, the DA chief added. For other major food commodities, the supply outlook by the end of the year is likewise favorable for corn, good for 237 days, chicken, good for 182 days, and vegetables, good for 20 days. He ensures that sustainably feed the country's growing population in the new normal. They must increase sufficiency levels of basic food and other commodities by prioritizing domestic production. To attain this, he said, the DA will harmonize the food supply chain system with other related sectors such as the economy, energy, water, environment, manufacturing, and health, and at the same time build resilience.
MARFA, four elements build the framework of food and nutrition security: availability, access, use and utilizations, and stability. Availability refers to the physical existence of food. On national level, food availability is a combination of domestic food productions, commercial food imports and exports, food aid and domestic food stocks. On household level, food could be from own productions or bought from the local markets. Access is ensured when all households have enough resources to obtain food in sufficient quantity, quality, and diversity for a nutritious diet. This depends mainly on the amount of household resources and on prices. In addition, accessibility is also a question of the physical, social, and policy environment. Drastic changes in these dimensions may seriously disrupt production strategies and threaten food and access of affected households. Another aspect is the biological utilizations. This relates to the ability of the human body to take food and convert it. This gain energy is very important when it comes to the daily physical activities. For example, working in agriculture, beside the utilizations, requires a healthy physical environment and adequate sanitary facilities as the awareness of care, food preparation, and storage. Stability describes the temporal dimensions of food and nutrition security, respectively the time frame over which food and nutrition security is being considered. Stability is given when the supply on household level remains constant during the year and in the long term. That includes food, income, and economic resources. Furthermore, it is important to minimize external risks such as natural disaster and climate change, price volatility, conflicts of epidemics, drought activities, and implementations improving the resilience of households.
Food ability. Enough nutritious food of sufficient quality needs to be available to people for their consumption. Availability can be affected by production. How much and what types of food are available through food that is produced and stored locally. Distribution. How is food made available? In what form, when, and to whom? Exchange. How much of food that is available can be obtained through exchange mechanisms such as barter, trade, purchase, or loans. Food utilization. People must have access to a sufficient quantity and diversity of foods to meet their nutritional needs, but must also be able to eat and properly metabolize such food. Utilization can be affected by nutritional value. The nutritional value provided by the food that are consumed as measured in calories, vitamins, protein, and various micronutrients. Health status: the effect of disease on the ability to consume the food and absorb and metabolize its nutrients. Food safety: access to food free from food spoilage or from toxic contamination introduction during the producing, processing, packaging, distribution, or marketing of food, and from foodborne disease such as salmonella. Preparation and consumption resources, knowledge and ability to prepare and consume food in a healthy and hygienic way. Food access: individuals and households must be able to acquire sufficient food to be able to eat healthy, nutritious diet or have access to sufficient resources needed to grow their own food. Access can be affected by affordability, the ability of individuals, households, or communities to afford the price of food or land for producing food relative to their incomes. Allocation: the economic, social, and political mechanism governing when, where, and how food can be accessed by consumers and on what terms. For example, food may be unequally allocated according to age and gender within households. Preference: social, religious, and cultural norms and values that influence consumers' demand for certain types of food. Religious prohibition or the desire to follow a specific dietary pattern such as vegetarianism.
Good day, I'm Cadet PADAYOGDOG. So, stability. After years of increasing global food security, world hunger is rising again. This rise is concentrated mainly in countries affected by conflict and fragility, where violent conflict can destroy crops, assets, and displace people. As a result of prolonged instability, borders can be closed. Safe access to market can be limited, and farm inputs can become scarcely available. To deal with such precarious environment, farmers and actors along the food chain employ various coping mechanisms that are best detrimental to food availability and at worst can contribute to further instability. Conversely, through the importance of agriculture in the economies of these countries, the development of the sectors can contribute to an enabling environment for increased stability. The promotion of resilience of rural food system can serve to increase household and community food security in the face of instability. In this topic, we look at the relation between food security and stability, especially ways in which interventions on this nexus can achieve more resilient food system, contribute to stability, and can bridge humanitarian and development programming. So, malnutrition, food security occurs when people are regularly worried or concerned about their ability to access adequate amount of safe, affordable, and nutritious food. It is a global problem and can occur because of lack of income to afford healthier food or because healthier food choices are not easily available. The latter can occur for a number of reasons. For example, anything that affects the food supply chain may affect access to healthier food, or an person's circumstance may mean that it is harder for them to access healthier food, and this circumstance can be manufactural, perhaps because they have limited transport or limited storage cooking facilities. Some people are able to adapt to circumstance to maintain a reasonable nutritious diet, while others are more susceptible to relative changes in their levels of food insecurity.
Hi, this is Engine Cadet Donmar Patlingrao. So I am going to report about the what are the threats of food security. So first, what is food security? So food security is defined as physical and economic access for sufficient food and will going to meet the dietary requirements from a productive and healthy life. So there are evidences from a literature suggests that 800 million people worldwide are food insecure, so meaning the largest social safety net of the government of the world is targeting ultra poor women to end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So there are main threats to food security, and these are first, world population growth. Second, the increased demand for food. Third is food price. Fourth is the disappearance of the variety of agricultural plant species. And next is the increase in the area of scarcity water and limitation of the availability of land. And lastly, the food losses and food waste. Common issue is morning food issues. So we see our supermarkets and groceries all over the world. They're filled up with various foods, and this is where we buy something that we need for our necessities and for our daily basis on our homes. So each time we visit is it's rather hard to imagine there is such a food crisis going on because there are issues that expired foods and the delivery or the manufacturers are not that good because of the quality of the foods itself. So second is the climate change. So when we say climate change, so inarguably this is food security's biggest challenge because every climate there is a clear indication that nature's balance is well messed up or it will break, and there are some food chains, the foods that we weathers that is a pattern become so erratic, so there are more intense, so the temperature changes either go up or go down. So recently the economic and mathematical models have been applied to address food security conditioning factors in latitudes that is surprisingly, although very different from those in regions that where I live. So I present interesting observations in common places that imports food, and the strategies that they make is they will replace them in a sense seem to be a recurring them, so it will reassure that there are no food issues or um, food poisoning. Considering them the greatest threat, so that was food issues and climate change. So it may be daring, however, from the point of view of the countries and every policies, there are countries' trade policies. They constitute an important element to take into action or in account. So there are countries in which the volume of product consumed comes from 50% or more with a tendency to increase every year or every month. So imports which we clearly reflects an unsatisfied internal demand, so in which however there are elements of low profitability, so meaning there are production that introduces complex or into a problem. was my report about food security and the threats. So we all know threats are very noticeable, and we can create an solution with that. So every countries must have some resolving actions and build some common sense of what we do, and um, every details that we needed to take action or take an account. So that's all, and again, this is Don Mar PATLINGRAO report. Thank you.
What are the threats to global food security? So first, COVID-19, climate change, and conflict are among the main drivers of global food insecurity. So which is conflict and hunger are closely intertwined. When one escalates, the other ones follow. So in any crisis, it is the poorest and most vulnerable who are hardest hit, and in our globalized world, so the impact of this conflict will always be reverberate across the continent. So for example is that negatively affects almost every aspect of a food system, is that from production, so harvesting, then processing, and then transport, to input, supply, and financing, marketing, and consumption. So the direct impacts can be include the destruction of agricultural and livelihood assets, and can severely disrupt and restrict the trade movements of goods and services. So with a negative effect is that the availability and prices of food, including nutritious food. So the causes of food insecurity is, one is lack of access to farming lands, then two is food is grown or produced from the land. So three, land grabbing. It is closely related to the point above. So the conflict is that of violence and wars, then also unfair trade, then rules, and also fast pace and population growth. So biofuels, then natural disasters, and climate change.
Good day everyone, I'm Engine Cadet IVERSON IHALAD. I'm going to report about is food security possible? Food security is a complex issue, especially the food supply and demand challenge. With the current global situation, achieving comprehensive food security is extremely challenging. Rapid population growth puts further strain on food supplies. Climate change and increased demand for biofuels are further factors. Climate change presents complicated issues for agricultural producers, as well as the energy and water industry due to increased variability and risk. It has an impact on agricultural land output. To conclude, in the current global situation, absolute food security is impossible to achieve. In fact, we are currently experiencing in a global food crisis, which has resulted in numerous deaths. There is a rapid increase in food prices and a shortages food supplies around the world. The 2022 Global Report on Food Crisis highlights the remarkably high severity and numbers of people increases or worse or equivalent in 53 countries in territories driven by pre driven by persistent conflict, pre-existing and COVID-19 related economic shocks and weather extremes. The compounding crises in different parts of the world were caused by compounding geopolitical, economic, and natural causes such as extreme heat, flooding, drought caused by climate change. The crisis followed food security and economic crisis during the COVID-19 pandemic. Following the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Food and Agriculture Organization, as well as other observers of the food commodities markets, warned of the collapse in food supplies and price increases. Much of the concern is related to supply shortages of key commodity crops such as wheat, corn, and soil seeds, which cause price increases. The invasion also led to fuel and associated fertilizer prices increases, causing further food shortfalls and price increases. Food price increases are having devastating effects on the poorest and most vulnerable. Fortunately, there are alternative ways that can alleviate the situation. These methods can help in securing the food availability. As a matter of fact, there are a number of options for increasing world food production. First, increasing product yield is one strategy to improve food security. Increase farm mechanism, more tractors, harvester, or etc. Or increase usage of agricultural chemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides can help achieve this. Boosting the amount of food available can be done by increasing irrigation, adapting high yields, seed varieties, and protecting crops from pest infestation. Additionally, assisting locals with the long-term management of local natural resources, such as soil conservation, water collection, irrigation system restoration, and biodiversity preservation, is an important part of shared solution to food security. We could also cultivate more land, make it more farmable, draining lowland terrain and upgrading poor soils, or terracing steep slope could be used to achieve these goals. If these methods are followed by the government and the people, there is a better probability of ensuring global food availability. So that's all for my report. Thank you.
In addition of Mr. IHALAD's report, is food security possible? Yes, food security is possible. Here are some of the possible solutions. First, reduce food waste. Food is wasted mainly because of inefficient preparations, bumpy or bad roads, over-selective customers, and inadequate storage facilities. If storage facilities are improved under adequate preparation for how the food will be used, less food will be wasted, and there will be a more food secure community. As mentioned earlier, FAO reports that each year, the food wasted globally is about 1.3 billion tons. Second, reduce the risk of commercializing. If food is grown of the purpose of feeding the community or nation, food insecurity levels will go down. Farmers can produce more food crops and will be able to produce cash crops when there are enough food crops in the market. There will be less risk of commercialization of food if it is sufficient in the market. Government should also implement programs that can allow farmers to know when there is sufficient food for everyone. Third, improve existing infrastructural programs. Some farmers fail to get their produce to the market because of poor infrastructure, including roads, storage facilities, and food processing equipment. It ends up rotting in the farms than being taken to those who needed it for processing. If the infrastructure is improved, more food will be available in the market and the food insecurity levels can go down. Fourth, improve trade policies. Some farmers fail to feed the community because of unfair trade policies. Corporate giants have already stepped in on commercialized food, making it harder for small-scale farmers to have their products in the market. Governments should, therefore, improve such policies and make it fair for everyone to participate. Fifth, promote diversification. Focusing on a single food crop or staple can produce terrible outcomes for food insecurity production. As such, to improve food security, there needs to be training on the importance of diversified and healthy diets for better nutrition. With more varieties of food and an educated community on the importance of diversified diet, there will be sufficient staple food available in the markets. 6. Close the yield gap. Most of our farming lands are drained of their natural fertility levels and cannot produce as much as they did years ago. To close the gap, governments and agriculture institutions in charge have come up with strategies and programs for improving crop yields, especially location-specific methods of sustainable agricultural intensification such as soil management and land improvement. Land conversion should be avoided as it encroaches into natural habitats and forests, and affects biodiversity and wildlife, and increases GHG emissions. The strategy or program set up should ensure food is available for all, and that wildlife and forests are not affected. Lastly, work towards defeating climate change. Climate change is severely affecting our lives and the production of food. If we fight climate change and farm sustainably, we will able to ensure there is enough food for us and future generations. It is an additional step in fighting food insecurity. When all of this practiced globally, no one will experience a shortage of food supply. That's all. Thank you.